Come with me, the giant rancher who saved a beaten mother and her 3 daughters. Emotional story. The red sun dipped low behind the jagged cliffs of Sierra Sol, painting the desert in streaks of gold and crimson. A warm, dusty wind swept across the sand, carrying with it the faint hum of distant machinery. In this quiet, lonely corner of the planet, the world felt endless and wide, but also lonely. Most travelers avoided this part of the frontier, where the settlements were sparse and the land seemed to stretch forever. Leora pulled the worn shawl tighter around her shoulders as she led her 3 daughters across the uneven ground. Mira, the eldest at 14, walked beside her mother, her eyes scanning the horizon for signs of danger. Tess, a thoughtful girl of 12, carried their small bundle of supplies, and Ivy, the youngest at 7, clung to Leora's hand, her small feet struggling to keep pace. Their journey had been long and harsh. The corporate landowner who once controlled their small farm had driven them away, taking the tools, the house, and the hope of safety. They had wandered for days, surviving on what little they had carried and what they could find along the way. The settlement ahead was little more than a collection of buildings half buried in sand. Some were metal, rusted from years of neglect, and others were built from salvaged materials that glinted oddly in the sunlight. Despite its rough appearance, it promised shelter, food, and perhaps, if they were lucky, kindness. As they approached, a shadow fell across the sand, long and wide. Leora stopped, holding her daughters close. Out of the shimmering heat came a figure so tall and broad that it seemed almost larger than life. His boots left deep impressions in the sand, and his wide-brimmed hat shaded a kind face. He moved with a calm strength, his shoulders carrying the kind of power that spoke of protection rather than threat. "Hello there," he said, his voice deep but gentle. "You look like you've traveled far." "Yes, we've been on the road for days. We need shelter." Her voice shook, not from fear of him, but from exhaustion and the weight of her worry for her children. "I can help," the man said, his eyes soft but strong. "My name is Cassian Holt. I have a ranch not far from here. You'll be safe there." He turned, gesturing with one large hand. The daughters followed hesitantly, amazed at the size and strength of this stranger who spoke so kindly. Even Ivy, normally shy and afraid of strangers, looked up at him with wide eyes, sensing the comfort he offered. The journey to Cassian's ranch was different from anything they had known. Instead of dusty paths and cramped shelters, the family found themselves riding on anti-grav horses, their feet hovering slightly above the sand. The desert stretched beneath them like a golden sea, with cliffs that seemed to float in the distance and strange cacti that glowed faintly in the twilight. Mira and Tess whispered in awe, while Ivy laughed, the sound like tiny bells ringing in the quiet desert. Finally, they reached the ranch. From the outside, it looked enormous. Its walls were made from salvaged starship parts, polished and shaped to form a home that was both strong and welcoming. Wind chimes made from old alloy pipes jingled softly as the family approached. Cassian led them inside, and their eyes widened at what they saw. The interior was warm and inviting, a mix of old-world charm and futuristic design. Wooden beams crossed the high ceilings, and soft lights floated in midair, casting a gentle glow over the room. There were comfortable chairs, a large kitchen with simple but clean utensils, and walls lined with books and maps. It was a place that had been built to endure the harsh desert outside, but also to welcome travelers with open arms. "Make yourselves at home," Cassian said. "There's water, food, and blankets. You can rest as long as you need." Leora's eyes filled with tears. She had never felt such relief. The past weeks had been filled with fear and uncertainty, and the offer of safety felt like a miracle. Girls ran to explore, finding small corners to call their own for the first time in days. Mira found a window that overlooked the desert. Tess discovered a shelf filled with tools and gadgets, and Ivy ran to a small table covered in strange crystals that glowed faintly in the dim light. As the family settled, Cassian prepared a simple meal of roasted vegetables and bread, something warm and nourishing. They ate quietly at first, the silence filled only by the occasional clink of utensils. Then Leora spoke, her voice soft but steady. "Thank you for taking us in. We've been through so much. I don't even know how to begin telling you." Cassian sat across from her, his large hands resting calmly on the table. "There's no rush. We'll take it one step at a time. You and your daughters are safe here. That's what matters right now." For the first time in many days, Leora felt a sense of hope. She looked at her daughters, who were laughing quietly over a small toy they had found in a corner, and she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, things could get better. After dinner, Cassian led them to their rooms. Each space was simple but cozy, with soft beds and blankets. Ivy's eyes sparkled as she climbed into bed, and Mira and Tess shared stories about the desert as they drifted to sleep. Leora, alone in her room, sat by the window and looked out at the horizon. The sky was painted in brilliant oranges and purples, the twin moons of Sierra Sol just beginning to rise. She could see the desert stretching endlessly, but for the first time it did not seem threatening. Cassian watched from the doorway, silent and thoughtful. He had seen many travelers in his time, but there was something about this family that stayed with him. Their courage, their love for each other, and the quiet strength in Leora's eyes reminded him of why he had stayed on this lonely planet. He had built his ranch not just as a home for himself, but as a refuge for those who needed safety, and he could feel that this family belonged here, even if they did not yet know it. The next morning, the desert greeted them with the same warm light and soft wind. Cassian had already gone to tend to the horses and check the fences, but he paused when he noticed a faint shimmer on the horizon. The air seemed to ripple strangely, almost like a heat wave, but with colors he had never seen before. It was the first sign of the approaching storm, something rare but not unheard of on Sierra Sol. Leora gathered her daughters, noticing the glimmer in the distance. "What is that?" Mira asked, pointing. "That's a desert storm," Cassian explained. "They can be tricky. Sometimes they just pass over, and other times they change the path of everything in their way. We'll stay inside until it passes. Don't worry. I'll make sure we're safe." The girls nodded, trusting him without question. Leora felt a shiver of gratitude. There was something comforting about this giant man who had opened his home to them, someone who promised protection and showed genuine care. She began to feel that the storm, though it might be fierce, would not harm them here. That evening, as the family sat together in the glowing warmth of the ranch, Cassian told stories of the desert, of floating canyons, and the creatures that lived in hidden valleys. The girls listened with wide eyes, imagining adventures and wonders far beyond what they had known. Leora smiled softly, feeling that spark of curiosity in her daughters' hearts again. By the time night fully fell, the wind had picked up, carrying fine red sand across the windows. The storm was on its way, but inside the ranch there was peace. The family sat together, the warmth of shared company stronger than any fear of the unknown. Cassian watched over them, a silent guardian in the dim light, knowing that this was only the beginning of their journey, but confident that together they could face whatever the desert would bring. And somewhere beyond the dunes, the glowing storm moved closer, its strange colors reflecting the promise of change, adventure, and hope. The desert storm had settled over Sierra Sol like a blanket of shimmering colors. Outside, the wind twisted and whirled, turning the red sand into golden waves that danced across the landscape. Cassian's ranch, built from salvaged starship parts and reinforced with sturdy beams, stood firm against the strange storm. Inside, it was quiet, warm, and safe, a haven where Leora and her daughters could begin to heal from their long journey. The morning light streamed through the windows, soft and glowing. Mira sat at a corner table, her hands tracing the intricate patterns of a map etched into the metal surface. Tess was at a shelf nearby, examining old tools and gadgets with fascination. Ivy ran back and forth, chasing the tiny floating lights that hovered gently in the air. Leora watched them with a tired but grateful smile. For the first time in days, the fear in their eyes had faded, replaced with curiosity and wonder. Cassian entered the main room, carrying a tray of breakfast. The smell of roasted root vegetables and fresh bread filled the air. "Good morning," he said, setting the tray down. "Eat while it's warm. We have plenty of time today, but we'll need our strength." Leora poured a small amount of water into each cup, and the girls began to eat quietly. Cassian watched them, noticing the little details that showed their exhaustion and resilience. Mira's hands shook slightly as she lifted her bread. Tess's eyes kept darting to the windows, and Ivy hummed softly, distracted by the tiny lights floating near the ceiling. After breakfast, Cassian led them on a small tour of the ranch. "There's a lot to see," he said, "and a lot you can learn if you want." The ranch was enormous. Inside the main building were rooms filled with books, gadgets, and maps of the desert. Outside, sprawling yards held strange machines and floating platforms that glided above the sand. Anti-grav horses moved gracefully, tethered near a shaded area waiting for their riders. Cassian pointed out each section with pride, explaining how he had built everything himself over the years. "Why did you stay here all alone?" Leora asked softly, breaking the silence. Cassian paused, his gaze distant for a moment. "I wanted to protect this land," he said finally. "A long time ago, I was part of a group that looked after travelers and settlements. Most of them left, but I stayed. This planet needs someone to care for it, to care for people who come through." Leora nodded, understanding the loneliness he had chosen for the sake of others. "You've done well," she said quietly. "This place, it feels like hope." As they walked through the ranch, Ivy's curiosity led her to a small door hidden behind a curtain. "What's this?" she asked, tugging it open. Cassian followed, surprised. Behind the door was a narrow staircase, leading down into darkness. "I didn't expect anyone to find that," he said with a chuckle. "It's a storage area, mostly old equipment. But be careful, the floor can be uneven." Ivy, fearless and excited, skipped down the stairs. Mira and Tess followed slowly, holding on to the railing. Leora hesitated at the top, feeling a strange mix of worry and curiosity. "Ivy, be careful," she called softly. At the bottom of the staircase, the girls discovered a cavern carved into the rock beneath the ranch. It was filled with glowing crystals that pulsed gently with light. The crystals illuminated the space in soft blues, purples, and greens, casting reflections that danced across the walls. The air was cool and slightly sweet, carrying a faint hum that seemed almost musical. "What, is this?" Tess whispered, her eyes wide with awe. "These are energy crystals," Cassian explained, joining them. "They're very old, from a time before humans settled here. They store energy in ways we don't fully understand. I use them to power parts of the ranch." Ivy reached out to touch one, and a gentle pulse of light ran through her fingertips. She giggled, amazed. Mira examined the walls, noticing faint markings etched into the stone. "These look like maps," she said, "or directions to somewhere." "Interesting. I've never noticed those before. Perhaps the crystals are showing us something." The girl's excitement was contagious. For the first time, Leora saw them not as frightened travelers, but as curious and capable young people, ready to face new challenges. "Maybe these crystals are trying to tell us something," she said softly, her heart lifting. The storm outside grew stronger, casting strange colors across the windows. Cassian led the family back upstairs, locking the door to keep the wind out. "We'll stay inside for now," he said. "The desert can be unpredictable during storms. But this storm, it feels different. Almost like it's pointing us somewhere." Mira, unable to contain her curiosity, asked, "Pointing us where?" Cassian smiled. "I'm not sure yet, but we'll find out together. Right now, the important thing is that we stay safe, and we learn what these crystals can do." Cassian showed the girls how to use small devices powered by the crystals. Tess quickly learned how to adjust the energy flow to light-floating lamps, while Mira experimented with a small map projector that displayed the desert in glowing lines. Ivy simply loved to watch the colors change as the crystals hummed in response to her touch. Leora spent most of the day watching them, feeling a sense of relief and gratitude she hadn't felt in months. She realized that this was the first time her daughters had truly smiled since leaving their home. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe that life could be different, better. By evening, the storm began to calm, though the desert still shimmered with strange glowing colors. Cassian invited the family to sit in the main room, where he placed a small crystal in the center of the table. "These crystals are connected to the land," he explained. "They show patterns, energy flows, maybe even safe paths. If we pay attention, they could guide us to something important." The daughters leaned in, fascinated. Mira traced the glowing lines on the table with her finger. Tess tilted her head, trying to understand the patterns. Ivy bounced with excitement. Leora watched them, her heart swelling with hope. As the night deepened, Cassian told stories of the desert, of hidden valleys, floating canyons, and mysterious creatures that lived beyond the horizon. The girls listened with wide eyes, imagining a world far larger and more magical than anything they had known. Leora smiled, realizing that, even in the harshest places, wonder and safety could exist together. Later, as they prepared for sleep, Cassian took a moment to speak privately with Leora. "You've been through a lot," he said gently. "But your daughters, they are strong. And you've been brave to come this far. Here, you can rest. Tomorrow we'll explore more, and perhaps we'll discover what the crystals are truly showing us." Leora nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." Cassian simply nodded, watching as she returned to her room. Then he stood by the window, gazing out at the desert. Somewhere beyond the dunes, the storm had left its mark, leaving behind strange lights and shimmering paths across the sand. He sensed that the crystals were guiding them towards something important, something that could change their lives forever. The family settled in for the night. Mira, Tess, and Ivy whispered quietly about the crystals in the glowing desert, their voices filled with excitement and curiosity. Leora held them close, feeling their warmth and strength. For the first time, she felt that they were not just surviving, they were beginning to live. Outside, the desert stretched endlessly, quiet and mysterious under the twin moons. The glowing remnants of the storm cast a gentle light across the dunes. Cassian's ranch stood firm, a sanctuary of hope and safety in the heart of the desert. And deep within the cavern below, the crystals pulsed softly, as if guiding the family toward a path that would lead them to a brighter, freer future. The night was calm, but full of possibilities. Tomorrow they would take their first steps beyond the ranch, toward a world that promised adventure, wonder, and perhaps even a home where they could finally belong. The morning sun rose over the red sands of Sierra Sol, spilling golden light across Cassian Holt's ranch. The desert was quiet, save for the soft hum of the energy crystals that pulsed faintly from beneath the ranch. The previous storm had left the landscape shimmering, the sand glittering like tiny stars under the twin moon's fading glow. "Are we really going out there?" Mira asked, standing at the edge of the ranch's high platform. Her voice trembled slightly, a mixture of fear and excitement. "Yes," Cassian replied gently, his large hand resting on her shoulder. "It's time to see what the crystals are pointing us toward. The desert can be tricky, but I'll be with you every step of the way. Together, we can make it." Leora took a deep breath and held her daughters close. Tess clutched a small notebook she had filled with sketches of the crystal patterns, while Ivy held on to a glowing crystal Cassian had given her for guidance. For the first time since fleeing their home, they felt a spark of hope stronger than fear. The trek began slowly. Cassian led them across the open desert on anti-grav horses, their feet hovering just above the glittering sand. The desert stretched endlessly, a vast canvas of dunes, jagged cliffs, and glowing cacti that swayed gently as if breathing. The storm had left strange trails of light etched into the sand, almost like glowing footprints guiding their path. Mira pointed toward a cluster of floating rocks in the distance. "Are those islands in the sky?" she asked in awe. Cassian smiled. "They're called drifting cliffs. The wind and gravity here shift them slowly over time. You have to be careful around them, but they can be helpful landmarks." The family moved together carefully, Cassian setting the pace. Leora watched her daughters, noticing how their fear had been replaced with determination. Mira's sharp eyes scanned the horizon for safe paths. Tess observed the glowing sand trails, comparing them to her notes, and Ivy laughed as the crystals in her hands pulsed in time with her heartbeat. As the day wore on, the desert revealed its challenges, but none that could not be overcome with care and clever thinking. At one point, a wide canyon appeared in their path, its walls steep and lined with loose rock. Cassian dismounted, holding out his hand to Leora. "We'll go down carefully," he said. "We can use the energy crystals to guide us." The family followed his instructions. Tess and Mira used their observations of the crystal's glow to mark safe footholds along the canyon walls. Ivy, small and nimble, easily navigated the path with Cassian's guidance. Leora focused on keeping them together, feeling a sense of pride in their courage. At the bottom of the canyon, they discovered a small pool of clear water, a rare sight in the desert. The girls ran forward eagerly, splashing their hands and laughing. Even Leora smiled, feeling the weight of worry lift for a moment. Cassian knelt beside the pool, filling a small flask of water. "This will help keep us hydrated," he said. "But also, take a moment to enjoy this. The desert has hidden beauty if you know where to look." Mira and Tess carefully traced patterns in the sand with sticks, noting how the glowing trails intersected and shifted. "The crystals, they're pointing toward that valley," Mira said, pointing to a faint green shimmer far off in the distance. Cassian nodded. "I see it. That's where we'll go next. But the journey won't be easy. We'll need to work together and watch for surprises." The sun climbed higher and the temperature rose. The desert seemed endless, but the family pressed on. Along the way, they encountered drifting sand dunes that blocked their path. Cassian showed the girls how to read the shapes and winds, using the anti-grav horses to glide across the shifting sand safely. Tess marked the patterns in her notebook, learning how to predict the dunes' movements. Mira learned to spot hidden rocks beneath the sand, ensuring no one stumbled. Ivy, laughing at every new discovery, suddenly froze. "Look!" she cried, pointing to a faint glowing shimmer beneath a small hill. Cassian approached and knelt, examining the ground. "It's a small pocket of energy," he said. "Probably left over from the storm. It's safe, but unusual. Let's investigate." Together, They uncovered a small cavity in the sand filled with glowing crystals, similar to those beneath the ranch. The girl's eyes widened in awe. "It's like a treasure," Ivy whispered. Cassian chuckled. "The desert has many treasures, but the real treasure is knowledge. These crystals can teach us about the land, the storms, and even the paths that are safe to travel." A strong gust of wind blew sand across their path, temporarily obscuring the glowing trails. Cassian stopped and held up his hands. "Everyone stay close," he said. "Trust the crystals."
"They'll guide us." Mira stepped forward, bravely.
"We can do this," she said. Tess and Ivy nodded, their confidence growing. Leora felt a swell of pride in their strength. Together they moved forward, following the faint glow of the crystals that pulsed in response to their presence. By afternoon they reached a series of jagged rock formations that formed a natural maze. The walls rose high above their heads, creating narrow paths that twisted and turned. Cassian stopped at the entrance. "We need to stay calm and watch carefully," he advised. "These rocks can be confusing, but the crystals will help guide us." Mira took the lead, tracing the glowing patterns in the sand and comparing them to Tess's notes. Ivy stayed close to Leora, holding her hand tightly. Step by step they navigated the maze, using their wits and the crystal's guidance. Cassian followed behind, steady and watchful, ensuring no one faltered. Finally, they emerged from the maze into a hidden valley. The sight took their breath away. Green grass stretched across the valley floor, dotted with flowers that shimmered faintly in the desert sun. A small waterfall flowed into a sparkling pool, surrounded by strange glowing plants. The air felt cooler, fresher, and alive with energy. "We made it," Cassian said softly, a smile on his face. This is a special place. The crystals led us here for a reason." The girls ran forward, laughing and exploring the valley. Mira examined the plants, Tess sketched the landscape in her notebook, and Ivy dipped her hands into the cool water. Leora stood back for a moment, taking it all in. She realized that they had survived the desert, learned to trust themselves, and discovered a place of beauty and hope. Cassian approached her, placing a large hand on her shoulder. "You've done well," he said. "All of you. The journey isn't over, but you've proven your courage and strength." Leora smiled, tears in her eyes. "We couldn't have done it without you." The family spent the evening in the valley, resting and exploring. The crystals in their hands pulsed softly, responding to their presence. The desert outside remained vast and mysterious, but here, in this hidden sanctuary, they felt safe and alive. As the twin moons rose above the horizon, casting silver light across the valley, Cassian gathered the family together. "Tomorrow we'll continue exploring," he said. "The crystals may lead us further, to a place where you can finally call home." The girls listened intently, their excitement mingled with gratitude. Leora held them close, feeling hope bloom in her heart. For the first time since leaving their old home, she believed that a new life was possible, a life filled with wonder, safety, and family. Outside, the desert stretched endlessly, but for the first time, it seemed full of promise rather than danger. The glowing trails of the storm faded in the distance, leaving behind a path of light that promised new adventures and brighter days ahead. And deep in the valley, surrounded by the soft hum of crystals and the whisper of the waterfall, the family rested, ready to face whatever wonders the desert would show them next. The hidden valley glowed softly under the light of Sierra Sol's twin moons. The waterfall whispered over smooth rocks, and the air smelled of fresh water and blooming plants. The crystals from the desert storm still pulsed faintly in the girls' hands, guiding them forward, as if encouraging them to explore further. For the first time, Leora and her daughters felt a sense of peace that had been missing for so long. Cassian Holt stood at the edge of the valley, his wide frame silhouetted against the glowing landscape. "This valley is special," he said, "but it's not the end. The crystals show us there is a place beyond, a safe haven where you can truly live freely." "A place where we can stay forever?" she asked. "Yes," Cassian said, "but the journey will take a little more courage. Are you ready?" Tess adjusted her notebook, eager to document the path, while Ivy held the glowing crystal tightly, her small hands trembling with excitement. Leora took a deep breath and held her daughters close. "We are ready," she said. "Together." They followed the glowing crystals as they led them through a narrow passage behind the waterfall. The water created a mist that shimmered in the moonlight, and for a moment the family felt as if they were stepping into another world. Behind the waterfall, a hidden cave opened up. Inside, the walls were lined with more glowing crystals, pulsing gently, lighting their path. "This is incredible," Tess whispered, running her hands along the walls. "It's like the crystals are alive." "They are," Cassian said with a small smile. "They react to energy, emotion, and intention. They show paths, dangers, and sometimes even hope. Pay attention. They'll guide us safely." The cave twisted and turned, but the crystals led them unerringly. At one point, a narrow bridge of stone spanned a deep chasm. The girls hesitated, peering down at the glowing depths below. Leora grabbed their hands. "We can do this," she said, step by step together. Cassian went first, his large feet sure and steady. Mira followed, counting her steps carefully. Tess kept an eye on the glowing crystals, letting their pulsing light guide her. Ivy held Leora's hand tightly, stepping carefully with her small feet. Step by step, the family crossed the bridge, reaching solid ground on the other side. Beyond the chasm, the cave opened into a valley unlike any they had ever seen. Rolling hills stretched toward the horizon, covered in soft green grass. Trees with shimmering leaves swayed gently in the wind. A sparkling river wound through the valley, and in the distance, small structures glowed warmly with light. The air felt fresh, clean, and full of life. This is it," Cassian said softly. "The safe haven the crystals have been leading us to." She knelt down, letting the girls run ahead and explore. Mira approached a tree with glowing leaves, reaching out to touch it. Tess found a smooth stone by the river and traced its shape in her notebook. Ivy laughed as she splashed her hands in the sparkling water. Leora's heart swelled with joy and relief. For the first time in months, she felt the weight of fear lift completely. Cassian guided the family toward the glowing structures in the distance. "People live here," he explained. "They came from many worlds, seeking safety and peace. This place is a community built on trust, kindness, and care. Here, no one will harm you, and you can grow freely." As they approached, a small group of residents came forward to greet them. They were friendly and warm, welcoming the newcomers with smiles and open arms. Leora introduced her daughters, and the community members immediately engaged them in conversation, sharing stories, laughter, and simple acts of kindness. The family spent the first night in a cozy home provided by the community. Leora tucked her daughters into soft beds, marveling at the comfort surrounding them. For the first time, she felt that the danger, the fear, and the long journey had been worth it. They were finally home. The next morning, the family explored the safe haven. Mira and Tess discovered a small library filled with books from many planets, while Ivy found other children to play with near the river. Leora walked with Cassian through the community, listening to the quiet hum of energy flowing through hidden crystals embedded in the buildings. "You've done a remarkable job," Leora said. "Not just for us, but for anyone who comes here. I only built the place. People make it special. It's the trust, the kindness, and the willingness to help one another that makes this a home." Over the next few days, the family settled in. Leora found a small garden plot where she could plant vegetables and herbs. Mira began learning how to use some of the simple machines powered by crystals. Tess documented everything she saw, sketching plants, paths, and the glowing energy flows. Ivy explored every corner of the safe haven, laughing and learning with new friends. Cassian stayed close, guiding them, teaching them, and sharing quiet stories of the desert and the crystals. His presence was steady and comforting, like a shield against the uncertainties of the past. The family realized that he had become more than a protector. He was part of their family now, a guiding figure who helped them discover courage, hope, and trust. One evening, as the twin moons rose again, Cassian gathered the family on a small hill overlooking the valley. The soft glow of the community lit the valley below, and the stars shone brightly above. "Look at what you found," he said softly. "A place where you can grow, learn, and be free. You've faced the desert, the storms, and the unknown. And now, this is your new home." Leora took her daughter's hands, feeling a wave of gratitude and love. "Thank you," she whispered, "for guiding us here, for believing in us, for giving us hope. I just helped you see it." The girls hugged him tightly, laughing and crying at the same time. Mira whispered, "We're really safe here, aren't we?" "Yes," Cassian said gently. "You're safe, and you always will be." From that hill, they could see the full valley, rolling hills, glowing trees, sparkling rivers, and the warmth of the community. For the first time, Leora realized that the long journey across the desert, through storms and uncertainty, had brought them to something far greater than they had imagined. They had found a home, a family, and a future full of promise. The crystals pulsed softly in response to their joy and relief, their gentle light filling the valley. Even the desert beyond seemed less intimidating now, as if it had guided them to this safe place for a reason. That night, the family sat together near the waterfall, watching the glowing plants and listening to the soft hum of energy from the crystals. They shared stories, laughter, and dreams of the days to come. Leora held Ivy in her lap while Mira and Tess leaned against her sides. Cassian sat nearby, a quiet, comforting presence. In the heart of the safe haven, surrounded by light, laughter, and the gentle glow of crystals, the family knew that they had truly arrived. Their journey had been long and filled with challenges, but it had brought them to a place where they could live freely, learn, and grow. And as they looked up at the twin moons shining over the valley, Leora whispered to her daughters, "We are home, and no matter what happens, we will always be together." The night was calm, peaceful, and full of promise. For the first time in months, fear had no place here. The desert and storms were behind them, and ahead lay a life filled with hope, kindness, and new adventures. The crystals pulsed gently, reflecting their hearts, and the safe haven shone brightly in the moonlight, a place where courage, love, and family had triumphed over all uncertainty. The journey was complete, but the story of their life in this safe haven had only just begun.